Coming soon.
Who was she?
What is she doing here?
A major new podcast series.
I've noticed her.
Was she a spy?
Death in Ice Valley.
All these identities?
A 47-year-old mystery.
It was like a cover-up.
Search for Death in Ice Valley wherever you find your podcasts.
You can hear the preview now.
Subscribe now and you won't miss the first episode.
From the BBC World Service, welcome to the latest edition of the Documentary Podcast. Please do rate the documentary on your podcast app and leave a comment. Let us know what you think.
Welcome to Telling Tales on the BBC World Service. I'm Penny Boreham. We human beings have always told stories since we could first communicate. They are and have always been an essential human currency. Our most ancient stories still reverberate in modern times. Today we are retelling part of a story first told nearly 3,000 years ago in ancient Greece.
For 2 nights and 2 days Odysseus was driven at random by swollen billows, and time again his heart foreboded death. On the 3rd day, as the groundswell lifted him, he saw in a quick forward glance that a little ahead there was land.
The Odyssey, Homer's epic poem, most likely first spoken, not written down, at the end of the 8th century BC, is the story of one man, Odysseus, and his 10-year-long journey home from war.
A great billow began to sweep him toward the rocky shore, and there his skin would have been stripped off, and his bones dashed all to pieces, if Athena, the goddess, had not warned him. And he seized the rock and clung there.
The poem describes Odysseus' countless trials and adventures, how he faced the wrath of the ancient gods but also received their guidance and advice, all the time relying on every ounce of his own wit, wisdom and ingenuity to eventually reach the island of his birth, his kingdom, Ithaca. Along the way, Odysseus needed to seek asylum in many places. In fact, the word asylum comes from the ancient Greek asylon, meaning refuge or sanctuary. And we'll also be listening to tales of modern-day refugees whose stories reverberate with this ancient tale.
My name is Leila. I came here around 6 months ago.
22-year-old Leila is originally from Afghanistan, but I met her in Karatepe refugee camp on the island of Lesbos in Greece. She had been living in this small plastic panelled hut for more than 6 months. Leila told me her story, how she and her 2 brothers had been forced to flee Afghanistan after the Taliban attacked their house and killed another of her brothers.
When they want to attack on our home, we left the house from one door at the back, but my brother was at home and he wanted to take the documents, and the next day we got informed that he is killed by them.
Why did they come to attack your house?
Because the reason was that our brother was a translator. That's why they don't like educated people.
Leila and her brothers were then directly threatened by the Taliban.
They found our phone numbers from his phone and threatened us, if I find you, I will also kill you. In this case, we afraid and left Afghanistan as soon as.
Everyone you meet in the camps on Lesbos has a tale to tell of their journey so far.
Hello, I'm Golinar.
Hello, Gulzarina.
Viviana. Hello.
What's your name?
Mahmoud. Hello, my name is Basuna.
I'm sitting with an Afghani family in another small hut in Karatepe camp. The father of the family, Guidinar, tells me how he, his wife, and 3 very young children made their way to Greece.
Firstly, we went to Iran, and we had so many things like clothes, necklace, and a lot of things. and some thieves stole us all our belongings. So then I was supposed to go from Iran to Turkey, and from Turkey I wanted to go through Bulgaria up to Germany. But the police in Turkey got us, so we couldn't go through Bulgaria, and we couldn't go through the continent, through Europe. So we were forced to come by a ship to Greece.
We have our lookout point over here, and just straight ahead of it there's this big mountain. It's just dark, and a lot of times we know that boats are being launched from there.
Eric Garrison is 21 years old and comes from Sweden. He's one of a group of young volunteers from around the world and from Greece itself who have come to the island after being moved by the plight of the refugees on Lesbos. He and his fellow volunteers scan the coast of Turkey, looking out across the Aegean Sea. They are searching for the flashing light of a mobile phone or any sign of a boat setting out to cross the ocean.
The smugglers organize transportation for the refugees from Izmir up to this mountain, where they then walk down towards the beach, and there is supposed to be a boat, and they go on the boat and they try to make it to Greece.
Άνδρα μιέν επεμούσα πολύτροπον, ως μάλα πολλά πλάχθη, επί τρίης ιερών, πτωλίεθρον έπερσεν.
In the Odyssey's opening lines, the poet Homer asks the muse of song for her divine aid in order to tell our hero's story.
Tell me, O muse, of the man of many wilds, who wandered far and wide after he sacked the sacred city of Troy.
At the root of our hero Odysseus's troubles is the anger of the ancient god of the seas, Poseidon, who persecutes him because during his journey Odysseus has blinded Poseidon's son, the one-eyed giant Polyphemus. We are joining Odysseus at the point when, after years of wandering, he is once more shipwrecked at sea, fighting to reach the safety of the island of Phaeacia.
A monstrous wave crashed over him from above, whirling his raft round and round. The mast snapped in two. He was forced underwater for some while, but at length he came up again and spat out the bitter brine. And as the monstrous wave kept sweeping the craft, so did the storm winds. Nevertheless, one being saw him, a goddess named Ino. She flew up from the waves as a seagull might and sat on the strong-bound raft, telling him to strip off his clothes, leave the raft and strike out with his arms to try to reach land. There on the shore, she said, he would be fated to find deliverance. She gave him her scarf, told him to wind it round his waist, so he should fear neither death nor harm. Once he had grasped the shore, she said, he should throw it into the wine-dark seas again and avert his eyes. She then sank down as a seagull might into the billowy sea, and the dark wave covered her. But then Poseidon, the earth shaker, heaved a huge wave against him with arching crest. It struck him full on, scattering the raft's long planks. So Odysseus, striding one plank as a man might do a horse, stripped off his clothes, drew the scarf around him above his waist, and let himself fall face downwards into the sea, striving desperately to swim.
We were in a small ship made by plastic, and we were 45 people. So 45 people at the same time came from Izmir to here. I was very worried because it was not a good quality boat. It was done by plastic and the water was everywhere, and my family don't know how to swim. So all my family was crying, my daughter was crying, my son was crying. And I was thinking about the small distance between life and death, how shortly distance they have. So I was thinking if we would arrive alive or death.
Lesbos was always between east and west. That's the destiny of an island on the border of Europe.
Yanis Tropounis, his wife Daphne and their family are hoteliers on Lesbos. They've been very involved in supporting refugees when they arrive on the island, opening the doors of their hotel, raising funds and providing transport.
If you see back to the history, 3,000 years, it's always the same story. But, in the 20th century, we have been used to have closed borders with Turkey, and so it was quiet, let's say, or no surprises. But the last 20 years, it has started to have people coming from the other side of the Aegean. The difference is that at the beginning, we had only small numbers. Let's say in 2005, we had maybe 4,000 people that they have passed through. And in 2013 or 14, we had 13 or 15,000 people in 1 year. And we have reached in 2015 to have 3,000 per day. So there were some days, end of August, September, that it was one boat next to the other coming.
For 2 nights and 2 days Odysseus was driven at random by swollen billows, and time again his heart foreboded death. On the 3rd day, as the ground swell lifted him, he saw in a quick forward glance that a little ahead there was land. It was like the sudden joy of children when they see their father out of danger. Such joy came over Odysseus. But when Odysseus was no further distant than the voice of a shouting man can reach, he heard the roar of the sea against the rocks.
And the sea hurls Odysseus towards the rocks, but the goddess Athena comes to his aid.
Athena sharpened his wits again. He struggled forth from the line of breakers and swam outside it. He came abreast of a flowing river. He prayed, "Hear me, Lord. Do not even the deathless ones owe compassion to a mortal who comes to them as a wanderer and a suppliant? Such a man as I am, approaching your stream, approaching your knees after much distress. Have pity upon me." The god of the river stilled the waters before Odysseus and brought him to the river's mouth.
In the boat, everyone was afraid, and when we were on the water, and benzene finished.
You're saying the fuel finished?
Yeah. Everyone was crying at that time. They thought that we were falling on the water. We couldn't do anything, but at that time the Greece police came and helped us.
The lifeboats came?
Yeah. They came and talked to us. They told me that we are helping you, and don't worry, we will carry you to Greece. We were happy at that time.
But the sea had broken the spirit in Odysseus. His body was swollen now all over, and brine in streams gushed from his mouth and nostrils. But when he got his breath again, he rallied the spirit in his breast, he undid the scarf the goddess had given him, and threw it into the seaward flowing river. The swelling water carried it on downstream, and the goddess Ino hastened to catch it in her hands. Odysseus limped away from the river, sank down in the rushes, and kissed the earth that gives man grain. Alas, what will happen to me now? What will become of me after all? I fear to become a helpless victim to birds of prey. But he went on upwards to a wood inside a clearing. He crept under 2 bushy olives. He heaped up a white bed of leaves. He lay down and covered himself with the fallen leaves. And Athena poured sleep upon his eyes, sleep to cover his eyelids over, sleep to release him quickly from toil and pains.
We got to arrive, all of us alive, so I was very happy of that. Since I saw the police, I just thought that the life was continuing.
Guidinar and his young family settled in Karatepe, one of the 2 main camps on the island. This is where families and the most vulnerable people tend to go, but Layla and her brothers initially stayed in the other large camp, Moria. Living conditions are very tough there, and Layla was frightened.
We were not safe there, and every day there is fighting. They fight with each other in Moria.
Layla managed to persuade an official at the camp that they should move to the calmer Kara Tepe. She says it was the retelling of her story that made the difference. Tell me, what did you tell him about your story that persuaded him you should come here?
I told him about my story, about my brother. He died in Afghanistan. Taliban killed him, and that's why he sent us here.
The volunteer Eric Garrison describes a chaotic night at Moria camp.
I was working in the distribution tent. It was a small tent where we had all the clothes, and was giving out clothes to some people that was there. And we realized that we started to run low on clothes. At this point already, we had the whole night ahead of us. And then I see my friend in front of me, and I just see how her jaw falls down and her eyes are so open. I'm like, what's happening? What is wrong? So I look behind me and I see how this long line of hundreds of families, soaked wet, coming walking just to the camp, exhausted. Some of them are almost like falling down. And I just realized that we do not have enough places, we don't have enough blankets, we do not have enough clothes for these people. We do what we can, we just start working. And I remember this mother came up to me and she handed me this baby. It cannot be more than a few weeks or a month old. It was super tiny, wrapped into a piece of blanket. I didn't even know it was a baby first. She gave me this, I thought it was clothes, so I took it. And then when I took it, I could see there was a little small hole for the head, and her face was completely blue and the lips were purple because she was so cold. And when I took her in my hands, I had no gloves at this point, so I could feel how her clothes were like, you know, when it's so cold and it gets frosty. It was this sound, and she was completely blue. So I just rushed with her to the hospital, to the local camp, like to the doctors, and they said if this girl would have been out for a few more hours, maybe she would have been gone.
When Odysseus awakes from his sleep, he encounters first the royal princess Nausicaa and then the goddess Athena again, now disguised as a young girl. They offer him valuable advice about how best to approach the Phaeacian king, Alkinoos, in order to beg for aid.
When Odysseus had all but entered the lovely town, the goddess herself came to meet him. She had taken the form of a young girl carrying a large jug, and in this disguise she halted in front of him. Odysseus asked her, "Child, could you be the guide to the house of Lord Alkinoos, who is ruler of your people here? I am travel-worn, a stranger from far away, not acquainted with anyone in your city or your countryside." Athena the goddess answered him, "Sir, I will do as you request. I will show you that house. It's near my own good father's, but you must walk quite silently while I lead the way. Do not look at anyone, do not question anyone. Men here do not befriend someone who comes from elsewhere." With these words, Pallas Athena led the way quickly, and he followed the footsteps of the goddess, the enchanted mist all around him, to the king's noble palace.
Our time is wasted here, and it's too long we are here. We don't know about future. It's problem that we don't know about future. We go to another countries or we will stay here. It's problem.
Layla feels suspended in time, not knowing, waiting, and is frustrated when she sometimes observes others moving on. She feels that Syrian people are favoured over others, like her and her brothers from Afghanistan.
And Syria, they go to Athena and then go to another countries, but they don't care about Afghan people are living here. How long we should live here? It's difficult. We should go to another country because we are on the way.
The young Swedish volunteer Eric Garrison has been profoundly affected by his experiences on the island.
I think I am a completely different person. I have got a whole other insight in both the refugee situation and this conflict that's going on, the whole situation, but also the other cultures, like the Arabic culture, the different African cultures, and it's just so amazing. The Afghanistan culture, all these different cultures that come here, because you have the pictures from the media and the newspapers and all this, so like what people say back home about different people, oh now they come and they are like this, people are like that, they do like this, but you get a whole other insight and a whole other view of their life and how they have had their lives. So in almost every way I have changed, both my emotions, and also my head and my knowledge has been become bigger.
یک کشور زندگی کنم که او کشور از پرده ما میشه.
It's not important which country is it. It's not important is Greece or some other countries. I just want my children could study there and could have a better life than we had in Afghanistan, and also for my wife and for myself.
So he spoke and sat down at the hearth in the ashes by the fire. The king took his shrewd and subtle guest by the hand, raised him from the hearth, and seated him in a glittering chair next to him. A maid brought water in a fine golden jug and poured it over Odysseus' hands for washing, holding a silver basin below. Then she drew up a polished table for him with many kinds of good foods. So much tried Odysseus began to eat and drink. Then King Alkinoos spoke to his page. "Pontonous, mix wine in the bowl and serve it to everyone in the hall. Then we will make libation to Zeus the Thunderer, who is patron of venerable suppliants." And at this command the page began mixing the fragrant wine, then poured the first drips into every cup in turn. Alkinoos spoke among them all. "Tomorrow morning we will proclaim a full assembly of our elders. We will entertain this guest in our halls and make noble offerings to the gods. Then we will think how to send him home, so that under our convoy he may return without toil or trouble to his own country."
We want to go to Germany because here our time is wasted here and it's too long we are here.
Why Germany?
I think that Germany is a little to take care about refugees, and that's why I want to go to there, because I want to continue my study there. In future I want to be a lawyer.
A lawyer? You want to be a lawyer?
Yeah. If I became a lawyer, I want to work about women's rights, because in Afghanistan they don't pay attention about women's rights and they ignore women's rights and also other problems.
Like solving problems?
Yeah.
And Lesbos hoteliers Yanis and Daphne Trombounis' wish is for Europe as a whole to step up and take more responsibility for the problem of the migrant crisis that they've been witnessing at first hand.
At the beginning, with so many refugees and just with us alone there, was very difficult to find things that the refugees they needed. When you live there and you have a relationship with the refugees arriving with the boats, with the refugees walking on the street, walking desperate on the street, it is a very hard time and full of sadness.
There will be always a migrant or refugees problem in Europe. And, well, so far Turkey is out of Europe and we are in Europe, we are the borders. And as we are the borders, we will have to deal with that. So we have, as Europeans, to find solutions of how to do it. It's not Lesbos the problem, it's not the islands the problem. It's just, we are just on the way, that's all.
Alkinoos says to Odysseus, "I hereby choose tomorrow for your journey home. Through that journey you can be soundly sleeping. You will learn for yourself how much better than others anywhere are my ships and crews as they toss the salt waters with their oars." Patient Odysseus rejoiced at heart and uttered a prayer in these words: "Father Zeus, grant that Alkinoos may perform his promise to the full. Then his good name will spread all over the world and never die, and I myself shall reach my own country."
Me, I'm a family, we're Muslims. So whatever happens to you, you shouldn't feel disappointed with God. All the time I find so many difficulties, I think I'm getting closer to God.
And Afghani father Gwydinar is watching his very young daughters absorbing new languages in the schoolroom in Karatepe.
I'm from Afghanistan. I'm coming from here. I'm school. I don't know school. I don't know English. I speak English. I don't know.
Well, you do now. Yeah, you speak very well indeed. Gwydinar says it's his children who strengthen his resolve to find a place to finally call home.
I
can say I've seen a lot of things in my life. In Afghanistan, I've seen many good things and many bad things. But in here, I'm just watching my wife and my children, my family, and I just realized that is something real, something serious. So I have to continue with that.
Odysseus in turn stepped aboard and laid himself down quietly. The Phaeacians untied the cable and began to throw up the water with their oars, while on Odysseus fell asleep. Irresistible, delicious, unbroken sleep. Thus the ship sped lightly on, parting the waves of ocean and carrying with her a man who was godlike in his counsels, one who had borne much grief of spirit, who had cut his path through embattled foes and wearying waves, but now was sleeping in quietude, with all his troubles put out of mind.
You've been listening to Telling Tales. The readings were by Prodromus Inchinoris. The music was composed by Giles Lewin. The classical consultant was Anastasia Bakojani. The producer was me, Penny Borum. And this is a Ruth Evans production for the BBC World Service.
Thank you for listening. There will be more from the documentary podcast soon. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And don't forget, do try our other BBC World Service podcasts too.